Good morning. Welcome to the City Council Capital Improvement Project Workshop, October 6, 2021. We are still under guidelines for anyone in attendance in this room to properly wear a mask, whether they have received vaccinations or not. I encourage everyone to obtain vaccinations or at least accurate information regarding those. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. 2 or more agenda items may be combined for consideration, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related discussion may be delayed at any time. I will call the meeting to order. We have confirmed that the agenda has been properly posted and all members of council are present here in chambers. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I should point out, Mr. O is our substitute city attorney. Again, for this meeting, Mr. O, appreciate your helping us out. We'll begin with our first public comment period. As stated in the posted agenda for this meeting, public comment may have been submitted by written comments via email. We will also have an opportunity for people to call in. Is there anyone here in chambers wishing to speak during the initial public comment period? All right, public comment during this initial period is limited to items on the agenda. Each person will have up to 5 minutes to speak. As always, we ask that you be civil and concise. And the phone line is available. The number is 702-589-9629. This is the initial public comment period for the City Council Capital Improvement Project Workshop. Anyone wishing to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, were there any comments submitted via email?
No written comments received.
Thank you. Hearing no one, then we will close the initial public comment period and move to the agenda item number 1, review and discussion of the 5-year capital improvement plan. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Keegan Littrell, our Public Works Director, will be providing your presentation this morning, and I'd like to thank him and his staff, Carol Lellis, for putting this all together. She worked countless hours on this and did a really nice job with our new software, ClearGov. So, Keegan?
Good morning, Mayor and council members. One correction to that is Carol will actually be giving the presentation. Yeah, so thank you for coming this morning. We're going to go over the 5-year CIP. As City Manager Tedder just mentioned, that we have some new software called ClearGov that we're using to input the projects into the funding. I don't know if you had a chance to look through the rather large document that was included in the packet, but that is a full breakdown of all the projects, where the funding's coming from, all the requests. I think it's a great program, and it's really going to help us. It helps us with inputting the projects. We can give other people access to the program, and they can input their own, and or they can just give us the information. In the past, we'd use pieces of paper, you'd handwrite everything, and then you'd turn it into the CIP coordinator, and then they'd have to input it. So this is a lot more efficient. And I think it gives you a better idea of how the funding or how the project will be spending the different types of money. But I'll let Carol get into that in a minute. So this morning we'll be talking about the 5-year plan, focusing more on next year's plan because that's the one that you guys eventually will tentatively approve. And then at the end of her presentation, we can open up to questions, discussion. We're hoping to have a good back and forth with ideas of projects that you guys would like to see done, ideas of projects that you don't want to see done. Just would like to have it really open so we get some direction, and then we'll bring it back formally in a council meeting where we can get direction on where we want to move forward to. With that, I'll turn it over to our CIP coordinator, Carol Ellis.
Thank you.
Good morning. We are working on the 5-year plan for fiscal year 23 through 27. And as Keegan said, we are using a new software that I'm very happy with so far. We are at a point where we'll actually be able to put the link on our website so that the public and yourselves and everybody can go in and look through the projects and see the plan. And today, I would like to go through the draft of the 5-year CIP. Okay, the first slide explains the capital improvement program. Basically how the CIP plan comes to, in different parts of the CIP plan, we'll be able to look at the whole 5-year plan, but we're only asking for tentative approval for fiscal year 23. Today, the figures are for the full 5-year plan, and it also explains what makes a CIP project, the funding sources, this is one of the graphs we're actually able to get out of the new program. And it shows for each of the 5 years, and it's color-coded on the funding sources. This is a slide that I did add, so it's in the packet and will be uploaded. And it breaks down by dollar amount each of the funding sources, but keeping in mind this is for the full 5-year plan. Okay. There are funding sources that will sunset out. So funding source number 2 actually was $500,000 annually for 7 years for the utility infrastructure, and the final funding on that is in the funding for 23, and that will be the last funding. Number 3, the proceeds from track 349. is actually, I apologize, the funding for number 2, the final funding was in '22. And number 3, the proceeds from Track 349, the final funding is in '23. And you'll see that in the packet. Number 4, the proceed, this I did make a change to your original. The proceeds from Track 350, Boulder Creek, to be split 10% for public safety capital needs and 90% to fund a swimming pool recreation project. And that's per the ballot question for that was approved in 2021. The following slides are a breakdown per department. Beginning with airport, I have asked the directors to be here to field questions. And my thought was to get through all the slides and then we can open it up for questions like Keegan said. So we start with the airport, keeping in mind that this is the 5-year plan. You'll see in the blue header, it says 23 through 28. After this was printed, I was able to figure out how to get that corrected. And the next time you guys see it, and anything that's uploaded, it does say 27. But these numbers are correct for 27. The following is public works for the streets. Again, the same header is through 27. Just to call attention, there was a couple of changes from prior years. So I did put those in parentheses so that you can recognize the projects that were in past years. And that's, for example, the crack and slurry and the street reconstruction. Our cemetery request. Apologize. The total over 5 years for public works. Next one is the parks and recreation requests. Boulder Creek Golf Course. The municipal golf course. The police requests. And we start in on the utilities. The first one is the electric requests, keeping in mind that this is over the full 5-year. The water requests. Wastewater. And the final department is fire.
Mayor and Council, before we skip to fire, I wanted to mention that we've been talking, and well, you guys know because we had a workshop, joint workshop with the UAC, but the UAC had a meeting last week to go over their projects. We're going to discuss that again, and then they'll be coming forward with their recommendation. I think we're getting pretty close to where staff in the UAC would like to see all the utility projects, but I just wanted you to know that that has been looked at thoroughly by the UAC.
Okay, the final, the next step is that towards the end of late October, which hopefully by the end of this week, I'll get a definite date for a citizen-led workshop. And then we're looking at hopefully the November 9th to bring it to council, the draft capital improvement plan to council for recommendations. And then a tentative adoption aiming for the November 23rd meeting. And then, of course, once we get a tentative adoption, this can be integrated into the full budget, operating budget approval through the spring. With the final being submitted to the, or being approved by the council with the operating budget and submitted to the state by June 1st. And we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Well, I have a few. You know, one, I get that this is difficult to do, but it's something that I've talked about in the past, that when we look at these figures, how much of our revenue each year goes towards capital improvement projects. And what I'm trying to get at, the point I'm trying to make is, in order for us to look at projects to be approved, we need to know how much money we have each year available. And I get that we have different revenue sources. We have the lease money coming in. Some of that is designated for capital improvement. But when we look at an overall budget like this, to be able to say, yep, these are things we can do and this is possible, or it's not possible, to be able to make a determination of how much money is coming in each year that's available for capital improvement projects. You know, my concern is that we have money in the bank and we look at that money and say, well, okay, we can cover the checks that we write here, but are we spending more or less than what we're taking in each year? And also with the way that the budgets are done, or the capital improvement budget is done, it becomes difficult to understand how much of this money is from our city revenues and how much is coming in from other sources. For instance, as I look at the Public Works budget, almost everything on that budget is money coming in from other sources. So it really doesn't apply towards our general revenues within our own city revenues, but it's coming in from other sources, primarily Regional Transportation Commission and flood control. So I don't have a magic template for you to use, but I think that's very important, not just for members of City Council, but for our citizens to be able to see in the budget, are we living within our means? Do we have money that we could direct to other projects? Or are we spending more than we're taking in?
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for not having that information in here. It was my goal today to more discuss just the projects of your guys' wish list, anything that you saw that we have in here that you absolutely don't want done. When we do come back to council, I know we're gonna have to kind of incorporate some of the information that we've used in the past, where I know down at the bottom we'd say funding source, and then we also had additional slides showing all of the revenues that we have that are being contributed to CIP. And if I understand correctly, that's what you're talking about right now. So when we do bring this back, we'll make sure that we do include, these are all the revenue sources, this is how much money we have, this is how much is in the bank account, to make sure we are living within our means and not overspending.
I appreciate it, and again, I don't have, I mean, I'll know it when I see it, but I can't really give you a template that I would like to see used. But it just becomes very difficult when we start talking about, especially these large amounts of money, and yet some of that money is coming in from other sources. Some of this is funds that we have been putting money into. Again, my concern is that not only the council has an idea of what we're spending, but also our residents have an idea.
Exactly. And I'm hopeful that that ClearGov program will assist us with that. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a hybrid of manually doing it like we've done in the past and in ClearGov. Because it makes perfect sense that, yeah, I might know how much money we're spending, but that's because I do this almost every day. Carol definitely knows, but someone that's not in the numbers every single day is going to have a hard time understanding how much money we're really spending. Like you said, for Public Works, almost every one of those were RTC or flood control. It looks like a huge number. It was like $5-6 million, but most of that's not coming from us.
Right, and that, for us to make that determination of what we see coming in from, consolidated tax, land leases, property taxes, where is that amount figured into how much we're actually spending?
Yep.
Okay. So that's one. Ms. Lellis had mentioned the ballot question expiring this year, I believe, for the $500,000.
Yes, sir.
My feeling is that as city council, we need to address that. Can you give us your input on, are we all done with our utility infrastructure? Or?
Far from it. We have a substantial list of projects we need to do in the utilities, and that has been part of our, what's the right word? Difficulties with the UAC is we have so many projects that trying to get everything addressed and make sure that we're getting them completed. So yeah, we definitely have the need there. So if there was something we could do to extend that or do a new one, it would be very much appreciated.
And I believe that the $500,000 that's listed here, that's money that comes from land leases. Is that correct? I see
sure.
Carol nodding.
She's saying yes.
Okay. And Madam City Clerk, what would be the timeline for a ballot question to be approved and ready to go on the ballot in November of 2022?
The dates haven't been determined yet. As soon as they are, I'll let you know.
But
Now we're aligning with the county,
right.
but much later than we would have during a municipal election.
Yeah, because municipal elections were held in June. As I recall, we were looking at a 6 to 8 month period of time that we needed to have those ballot questions ready to go.
That's an average, yes.
Okay, so probably by the end of the year, we should have a pretty good idea of what we would like to do.
Probably in December, we would start the process.
Okay. So, again, I think we need to look very hard that $500,000 had been approved initially in 2014. Certainly what I've seen of our list of projects within the utility fund, nothing got cheaper, and we have gotten a couple of big projects either completed or substantially complete, but there's still some big ones left.
Yep, correct.
Okay. Within the funding for the utilities, that's the only debt that exists for Boulder City is within the utility fund, specifically the water account. Again, I agree with separating the utility fund into 4 separate accounts, electric, water, wastewater, and landfill. It makes it easier, I think, to evaluate things. But I think we should not misunderstand that because that's being done for accounting purposes, it doesn't change or alter the fact that the utility fund is an enterprise fund. So we don't have 4 separate enterprise funds. We have one enterprise fund, which is the utility fund. And I know that budget projections have been made to address each of the 4 accounts, but that doesn't mean that that money can't be moved around. And my concern again is that is the debt. I think we're still somewhere around $22 million, I believe, to pay off the raw water project. Again, I think we need to be specific about how that is going to get done, because we are, I believe, approaching a period of time where we had considered making advance payments on those bonds.
Yeah.
As far as specific projects go, you know, within the Public Works Fund, the amount of money that goes towards our street projects is pretty much based on the budget we get from RTC. I think we should take another look at that particular funding source because we're really not spending any of our general fund revenues on taking care of our streets.
Yeah, the only general fund that we're going to request is for doing private parking lots, like city-owned parking lots. The rest of it is coming from RTC, like you said. They've been very helpful with us and Mesquite. They understand that we get projects done, and when we go ask them, I can't remember them saying no to a project, but it is dependent on how much funding they have. They have a large part of money, and unfortunately, we got moved into a different funding source, but it also helps us at the same time as we can go back and ask for more money more often.
Yeah, and you know, I've been on the RTC board. We look at the figures, we look at the amount that goes to the city of Las Vegas. You know, it's huge, but I know that people are actually doing calculations, figuring out, well, is Boulder City asking for more than their fair share?
Yep.
But what I'm getting at is I believe that our streets are in a condition where we can't just say, well, we'll wait for that RTC funding. We probably need to take a look at how we do our street projects and see if we can't direct more revenue towards that particular area.
Yep. Yeah, with us contracting with GCW, helping out with our pavement maintenance, we are working towards that 5 to 7 year plan, and that's when all streets should be surfaced in one way or another. So we are going that direction. Unfortunately, it just takes a little bit of time for it to be visible to everybody, but that is our goal, is having every street resurfaced every 5 to 7 years, and that will require quite a bit more money than what we show RTC giving us. Again, they've been great about us telling us yes when we go ask them, so we're going to continue doing that.
And I think it's important to point that out, that street maintenance assessment plan was completed, I don't know, roughly four months ago, something like that. That's a first step to identify what the needs are, and we haven't had that before. So I appreciate the focus on getting that plan together so that we will have an idea of what we're looking at. With regard to the airport, again, looking at the projects that are there, you know, again, I don't see where there's a great deal of city funds that are going into that. It appears to be primarily FAA money for most of those projects. But again, it's not clear from what we're looking at, although you know, we're looking at over $13 million in projects.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful there, again, to have an idea of how much of that is city revenue and how much of that is outside revenue. And as far as the projects go, you know, I've made myself clear on that before. You know, I understand that I hold the minority opinion there, but I don't see our residents wanting to see that airport grow significantly. The air traffic down there, again, it's great if you have a plane. It's not something that I think is critical for the success of Boulder City by any means. Parks and Recreation. Something about the golf courses, you know, $4.2 million in capital improvement projects. What I don't see on there is any projects related to water conservation. There are projects on there for irrigation, but the indication is it's primarily for things that are wearing out. We need to get serious about water conservation, and that's not reflected in the Parks and Recreation budget. That's a failure. There needs to be something done. I know that work is already underway for SNWA to make recommendations on turf removal, but I'm not comfortable with a capital improvement budget that doesn't put a great deal of emphasis on water conservation. We're under a Tier 1 emergency starting next year. That's never happened before. We can't just keep rolling along with other projects and pretend that that's not happening. Something that I'm not familiar with, I see that Judge Miller's here, the Court Assessment Fund. I'm just not clear on how that works.
Would you like me to respond?
If you would like to.
Absolutely, thank you. In chapter, I believe it's 176 of the NRS, provides that for whenever there's a fine assessed, there is a facility assessment that goes to the local court that assesses the fine. It amounts to $10 per fine or for a ticket. So that's what that is.
And that then, you know, I know we've had a couple of additions put on to the facility over there in the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
Right.
That fund then is what's paying for that type of work, or?
Exactly. The Justice Court facility or addition was about $500,000, and that was paid for exclusively by the facility funds, and then the city attorney offices over there were also paid from that fund.
Okay. Are there? I'm guessing that tickets are still going to get written in the future. Are there other plans for that funding, or does the NRS specify how that funding can be used for maintenance or additional improvements?
Yes, and it's similar things as that. In the works right now, and is the U.S. Marshals came out and they do the security for the courts in the federal government. And they came out and did a security assessment for us, and there are several items that we need to address on that, one of which is securing the back parking lot, and that's the next project will be that, probably $80,000.
Okay. All right, as I say, it's listed in there, but it didn't have a lot of other information
Sure.
with it, so I appreciate that clarification.
You bet.
Thank you.
Yeah, as the judge just said, we're actually working on a plan for the secured parking. Our biggest hurdle right now is access to the Safe Nest building, which has got 2 doors, 2 separate, it's one building, but it acts as 2 separate buildings. So we're trying to figure out proper ADA access into that building before we basically gate off in front of the entrances. So we're working on that one right now.
All right. And speaking of parking lots, I know it's actually been on the CIP for some time, the parking covers, primarily for the police department. You know, when we do these things, what I would like to see is that the architecture of them is reflective of the architecture of the buildings that are here. It's not that I dislike the one across the way there, but it doesn't say 1930s anything to me. Yeah. And I know that's not easy to do with a parking structure, and there's solar panels on top of it and all that. But I think we have something within our uptown area that's important to our business community and to our citizens. So whatever we do, I think we need to look hard at it. And we would still have 2 other parking lots in this area that would be uncovered. Yep. So a plan that says okay, we're going to try and make this look like people actually intended to do it rather than there was some money left over, so.
Yeah. Yeah, as part of our ADA access that we were talking about, the bridge and the ramp down to the parking lot, staff and engineering has been working on an overall layout. We have a couple different options that are real close to being able to bring it to council to show you the options. One is just the real basic to make sure you have ADA access. And then there's kind of a middle of the road that might work, but then there's a much nicer option that talks about the covered parking, including something that would complement the building, but then making sure that we do have proper ADA access throughout the parking lot and including the shade structures and the solar for the, however we want to use the solar, whether it's for the building or however that's wired in.
So this is not our complete CIP list we're looking at today. That's fine. But again, the point I'm trying to make is, you know, instead of, you know, picking these off as one standalone project, I think it's critical for this part of town especially that we have an idea of what we want to do and the architecture to be used and that sort of thing.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, and back to the golf courses. You know, it just seems that this is one of these things that's an unplanned boondoggle that every year, you know, the request in the CIP of over $4 million, that's 10% of our annual budget. And it seems that there are never enough requests that come in. You know, the golf courses, if we look at the revenue that is generated, it does appear that they were breaking even, but that's only for operations and maintenance. Then we get these type of requests. I can't support having these types of projects when we look at other things that need to be done and the amount of money that gets poured into those golf courses. So that's my thought on golf courses. It's not that we can't do anything, it's that we continually get asked to do an awful lot. The fire department, you know, I get the requests, but I think we need to take a look at, you know, what has changed over the last 20 years in Boulder City where these types of facilities are necessary. I do understand it puts a burden on the department to use the training facilities that have been negotiated with other entities. You know, I just look at something like this where we've got a training facility and a classroom, total $2 million close to, and you know, we've not had those facilities before, but now there's apparently a need has been identified. I think, again, we need to take a look at how we're spending that money. You know, that's most of my comments. Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I want to make sure you were done. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I just wanted to confirm to myself. I had some questions and now I have some more. Okay, the overall, these are not per year. This is a 5-year plan, correct?
Correct.
So the amounts, the totals at the bottom of each sheet come to what a spending plan over a 5-year period. Okay.
Yeah, for the workshop, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
For the workshop, we wanted to show you the full 5-year, all the requests in there. Carol has figured out a way that she can print out just the 1-year report. So I think we'll add that as an additional attachment when we bring it back to council at a council meeting. So you'll have both. You'll be able to see what the requests are and the funding are
Per year.
Per year.
Per year, yeah, because I noticed some are like 2023 and 2026 or so on. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I got that. Also, and not to be argumentative or anything, but the airport, I don't gather that the airport requests are about growth. I think it's about dealing with what we currently have or would have if, without the pandemic, as opposed to let's do this for growth and rehabilitation of runways, safe beacons, and the tower were not, in my opinion, meant to indicate we wanted to grow the airport as opposed to just maintain and keep safe the one we have. I think it would be helpful for me to have a graphic representation of the whole thing, and in terms of income, especially those things coming out of the general fund, because from what I see on the graph, general fund is not a significant source of the funding of these capital improvement plans. I mean, that there are, of the $63 million over 5 years, that the general fund is that purple, correct? The dark purple?
Yeah, about 9% or $6 million.
Yeah, so about 9%, and that the rest comes from either outside sources or dedicated forms of funding within our own government. Mm-hmm. Okay. I noticed in here, in talking about the golf course, a combined discussion of wastewater and the golf courses, I have a question that hasn't been answered, and I know it's not really part of the capital improvement plan, but how much wastewater we're actually selling? Is it all of it? Because a down the road capital improvement project that might get funded all or in part by SNWA might involve getting our wastewater treated one more time and then used as to water our golf courses.
Correct.
Okay, so I know that's not on here in any way, but that, and also the removal of unessential turf on our golf courses anywhere that people are not hitting the ball. There was another. Okay, on the golf course requests, I noticed they show the golf carts. Now we approved the golf carts for Muni. Is that the one? No, or the other, Boulder Creek. Okay, so we've already approved that. Now the Boulder Creek golf cart lease to own, that's already an approved project, and so you're just showing what the
spending is.
What the spending will be, even though that's already, just like the air traffic control tower, these are approved already, and just showing. Is there a way to highlight in this going forward projects that have already been approved?
I'm sure we can figure out something.
Yeah, because we're not starting from scratch here. There are projects on here that have already been approved individually.
Yeah, we might be able to put it like a notation like we have on Boulder Creek. The top one says it's a new project in parentheses. We could put something there saying approved by resolution.
That would be fabulous.
Okay.
That would be fabulous, because then we're not going over again projects that we've already agreed to go forward on.
Council member, I think when we have the year-by-year printout for you, that'll be helpful as well to represent that.
Okay, because I'm like, well, I know one of them we've already approved, but then that would be very helpful to me. And also, I wanted to ask in terms of the, because I know the electric requests also. And we did, and on here, the water requests, does that include the thing we kept discussing in terms of the pressure reducing valves on the pipeline in the El Dorado Valley, the one that was most recently built that is not being used?
That one, for 250,000, it's from a previous year, so it doesn't show up on that.
Okay, so that's not on it.
Yeah, if it's already an ongoing project that just unfortunately hasn't moved forward, but eventually we need to put some of those PRVs in on that existing 14-inch line.
The one, the older one?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to at some point see something on here about also the wastewater, a solution, a long-term CIP project for a long-term solution to our wastewater situation.
Yep.
And also fire request, what, in terms of what we're currently using for the training?
So part of the issue is, and I know the mayor had a question about what we've done for the last 20 years. When I got here, honestly, they weren't doing a lot of the required training. So we're required to do 216 hours of firefighting training a year. Of that, 18 is required to be at a training tower, and another 6 is hazmat, which is typically done there. So we can use Henderson's tower for free, that's correct. But it costs about $75,000 a year in overtime to get the people out there to do it. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is look at a solution long-term so we don't have to continue to pay that overtime. Where if the tower is here in town, we can use it on duty and respond if we have a call from there, so nobody has to be on overtime. So that's a big part of it. I know when I got here, there was a CIP request for $5 million for a training tower, and we worked to get that down to, it's currently $972,000. The reason it says 1.1 is they figured if we wait until sometime next year, that's probably what it would cost, and so we're just trying to cover that. The classroom is a joint thing with the public safety, with police and fire. We discussed that we don't currently have a classroom setting where we can host classes or have joint classes together. So like if we're gonna do active shooter training, we don't have anywhere we can meet together with desks and classroom style. Our training room will seat 20 people really tight in the fire station. And so that was really what we talked about, is looking at building a classroom that's big enough not only for us to use, but other city departments can use when we have meetings. I know currently if we have a big meeting, we come in here. This is not really conducive for a classroom setting with taking notes and writing and stuff like that. And so that's really where that came from.
Okay. That's my question. I guess I still just, I want it stamped all over that this is 5 years. That we aren't coming up with an amount that's just this next year and how that's divided up. It's I know it's important to me, and I think it's important to people outside of this room that look at it and say, I can't believe we're going to spend $63 million, and that just looks like an overwhelming amount of money. But 5 years of general fund is...
You didn't know we were going to request to triple the staff this spring so we could do the 63 million?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. What page is that on, Keegan?
Only teasing.
Something was anticipated.
Yeah, only teasing.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I do just want to say that I do think that this, I like the new system that's being used. This is much more clear to kind of see what's going on. So all the work that went into that, I really appreciate it. As has been mentioned, there obviously is a difference of opinion on what types of projects are appropriate at the airport, but there seems to be consensus that we don't want to see the airport grow substantially or see traffic increase much more than it already is. That, for me, the one concern then that I see is the new construction for taxiway E. To me, it says, would relieve apron area congestion, but to me that seems to be that it would also open up another taxiway for additional traffic. So I'm more than happy to have that conversation. I can more than happy to go to the down to the airport, talk with the manager down there. But that's something I would like a little bit more information on to see, because that is where I start to get a little bit concerned. As has been also noted with the water conservation, I do note that a lot of projects in here do talk about irrigation upgrades, but if we don't get our irrigation right, our water conservation efforts cannot be successful. And so, you know, we need to really think out how are we going to do, it's kind of like making sure you get the right ducks in a row, you know, so that one thing doesn't go ahead of the other. Because if you don't have the right irrigation, then your landscaping is not going to work. If your landscaping is not going to work, you know, it kind of is a domino effect. And so I just want to make sure that when we start to look at some of these irrigation projects, that we really are looking ahead into the future, so that we're not just getting new parts and using the same irrigation systems, because irrigation has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades. And I don't know that Boulder City has updated a large part of its irrigation projects, irrigation systems within that same time frame. So I would really hope that we really look in and see what we can do. It probably will be a little bit more money than to just keep doing what we have been doing, but we won't be successful with water conservation unless we do that. So I think that's really important.
For your information, and everybody else's information, our landscape supervisor has been doing, working with a consultant to do water audits, and that's where he's coming up with a lot of these smaller valve replacement projects, figuring out where we're wasting water. So he is working towards that.
Excellent. I'm really happy to hear that. And then finally, and I know this is a little bit of putting the cart before the horses but we had recently talked about night sky lighting and what that might look like. Obviously, we don't even have that in front of us to know what that would cost, but I just hope that it's something that we are thinking ahead, because it will cost money, at some point, but just something that needs to be, in our mindset, that might not be right here at this time, but, likely something we will be seeing something coming forward.
Yeah, Miss Pipkin and I have been working very closely. She's helping us out with trying to find grant opportunities. She's wealth of knowledge, so she's helping out with a lot of aspects of this. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's too early to put it in here. We don't have any idea what we're going to need for a study or
right. Yeah,
or anything.
And I understand that absolutely. I just wanted to make that statement out there, so
yep.
Just so that we're all kind of on the same page. That's really the only other thing, and I think we've had this discussion before, so I think I know the answer, but when we talk about, security cameras and video surveillance and all that sort of stuff, we're not talking about expanding our surveillance programs. We're talking about upgrading the current systems that we're already using, where we're already using video surveillance, correct?
That's my understanding. I know they're working on, I guess master plan would be the best word for it, just so we do have a plan in place instead of just going through and picking and choosing, kind of like you were talking about the irrigation. So Sergeant, is it Sergeant or Lieutenant? Lieutenant Albowitz is working on that right now.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes, thank you. First off, I just want to point out, thank you very much to the staff for all that you do and recognize that you do a lot of work in your individual departments to, first off, get grants and different funding sources, which is appreciated, and it helps alleviate some of the cost of what we're providing as a city, and that is appreciated. With that being said, I would echo what the mayor said in that it would be helpful for me, and I'm sure even the public, to see how those sources of income impact the things that we are requesting. For example, I was looking at the 12.5 million FAA grant, and I wanted to know, is that request that was by the airport, is that inclusive or exclusive of that grant money? And how much of that is covered?
Yeah, I know, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's a very small percentage coming from the city to match their grant. It's 90-some% is coming from FAA. But yeah, you see on slide 5 where it's breaking down where these funds are coming from, but it's not pointing at the specific projects. So I think we can make that a lot more clear. Yes, you have an overall on slide 4 and 5 where the funding's coming from, but if we could do it on each individual department or project type, we could explain that. Maybe down at the bottom of the airport one, we got 13.4 million, but 12.2 8 or whatever the number is coming from FAA. The rest is coming from general fund.
Right, and that would be helpful, I think,
Yep.
because then that doesn't look like quite the substantial impact
Yep.
that it's having. I'd also echo the words of Claudia in that I do not feel that the things that are asked for is to grow the airport, but to maintain and to keep it safe for those who are utilizing it currently. And so would love to see the breakdown of that. The other question that I had was regarding the wastewater treatment that we were talking about possibly taking our wastewater and irrigating our golf courses. And if that happens and we go in and we replace our irrigation ahead of time, is that wise to replace that ahead of time? Because would we have different needs if that happened?
I'm definitely not an irrigation expert, but my understanding of it is we could go in and replace the irrigation at any point. We just, if we're coming from the treatment plant versus where we're tapping onto potable water or raw water, would be a different location. So we just have to plan out for the future of where we'd want to connect to the treated water. But as far as the irrigation heads and the lines, I don't see much of a change on that. I know there's some flushing that we'd have to occasionally do with raw water or potable water, but I think we could move forward with it.
Okay, yeah, and I definitely don't see the golf course as a problem in this community. I just saw last weekend they had qualifying school out there, brought a lot of people in, and yes, we want to run the city as I don't know, wisely as we can, and I think it's important to look at it and find ways, but I think we also need to understand that we're here to benefit the community, and that some of our services that we have out there do benefit the community at large in different ways by bringing people in for our businesses, and I think that there's not a price tag on that, and we need to remember that.
Council member, back to your question on the control tower. So for the public as well, on page 42 of your packet, the FAA grant for 2023 would make up 94% of the project, which is about $4.2 million, and the airport fund would cover 6%, which is about $282,000. But we can give you the full year-by-year breakdown as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? One thing I would like to point out about the airport, there is a master plan. It was approved some years ago. It is absolutely geared towards growing that airport. So I understand that there are particular projects, the control tower, where it's like, oh, that's just for safety. Well, it's actually in the master plan, and there is a master plan. It's many, many pages long. And that plan is to grow the airport. FAA funding, the more you look at it, in my opinion, the scarier it gets, because it's like getting into quicksand, that the more money you accept from the FAA to grow or improve an airport, the more you're beholding to growing and improving the airport. So I think that's a very important aspect for the community to understand, that this isn't just a one-time project. This is part of a master plan that's in place, has been approved, and is being worked on for the future. It's disturbing to me what's in that master plan as far as what that airport is supposed to look like in a few years. Another issue with these pressure relief valves, the pipeline to nowhere clearly doesn't have any pressure, so it doesn't need any relief. It's also a project that doesn't appear to have any use that was stated as its purpose, but there is an existing line that goes down there to El Dorado Valley that appears to need some attention. There are concerns about the pressure because of the change in elevation, and also if there is a break, where can the pipe be shut down so that the break could be repaired? I've been told just recently that there's like 13 miles of pipeline that there's no valve to shut it off. So that might be something that needs to be looked at as well. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Thank you. I do have a question, and again, it's sort of on the boundary of this. You know, we talked about the ADA improvements that have been made at certain intersections, and that some of them, while meeting the letter of ADA, don't necessarily meet the spirit in terms of accessibility. And I know some communities have ADA audits, and is there a possibility of something like that, because we're addressing using RTC funds, or whether we're using general funds to fix or repair or replace certain decisions that were made at some point. It's kind of like the lighting in a way, you know. It's like decisions were made at one point to do it a certain way, and then discovered that the way these ramps are put in, that it would lead somebody who was visually impaired right into the middle of the street into a diagonal walking situation. To have an audit like that, that might lead to some additions or changes to our, to the public works CIP part, you know, that we need to add a more auditory system to our crossing, what are they called? The lights on the crosswalks and so on.
Yep. The city engineer and I have already been in discussions with GCW, who is doing our pavement maintenance program. As they're doing projects, they're going to start addressing these. So that's one way that we're going to address the concerns you're talking about. As for doing a citywide audit, I'm a little apprehensive of taking off that large of a project at once, because as soon as we start identifying all these locations, then we're obligated to start fixing them immediately. And if we don't have the funds, then we might get in trouble. So we're working on, we're throwing out ideas of how we can maybe do an audit of a section of town and work our way through it, because as we were talking about earlier, there's only so much money that RTC has available.
Sure. And whether or not they want to pay again for an intersection that they've already paid for, but
Correct.
It was.
Yep.
But it is possible to do it on a small, you know, section by section, and look at certain.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why we couldn't do that.
Yeah, and also look at those decisions as we have the projects, the bigger projects.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes, I know that it's been brought up about the airport, the question regarding taxiway E, and I know that you said that Ms. Adu was here. I was wondering if she could maybe be more specific as to why there is a need for an extra taxiway, since there's concern.
Good morning. I'd be happy to address that. So the traffic at the airport, the way the helicopters take off and land at the facility, that's been evaluated over the course of, since they've been there in 2007. So when this was identified as an issue. And so we've done lots of work to mitigate the activity on taxiway Delta that's currently in use in front of all the ramps. And because of the intense traffic that is there, that exists now, by moving the taxiway away from the ramps, it allows the traffic to go by. We had an incident a number of years ago with two aircraft that had had a small collision, and so we're working on ways to mitigate that risk out there, and by relieving some traffic from that taxiway and moving it to the south and creating a true parallel taxiway to the runway will help to alleviate that.
So it's basically because we have two different kinds of aircraft landing, basically, because helicopters come in and land differently than a airplane.
Right, so the helicopters hover out and take off in that vicinity of the area, not particularly over the taxiway, but so with their movements with the fixed wing aircraft, this creates some conflict because there's no control over the space as to who can go when. By moving that taxiway down and moving the fixed wing traffic and the helicopter traffic, it's just rearranging it so that it flows better and we have increased safety.
Okay, and when you were up and running before COVID, what was the percentage maybe of helicopters landing in a day versus fixed wing?
I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but we have a lot of helicopter traffic versus fixed wing traffic. So that area is quite busy. It's kind of like a little beehive, I would say, of traffic when it's fully operational. So this it doesn't look like we need that today, but as traffic starts to increase at the airport we have our numbers return to normal, we'll start to see that again, and so it'll be important to continue planning for that type of improvement.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Adu, before you go, I did have one question. I haven't looked recently, but there was a link on the airport website to the master plan. Is that still available?
Yes, that's still available online.
Okay, so that master plan is available to council members and the public then to review?
Yes, you can look at it at any time.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Do you have a finishing flourish for us?
I'd do a dance, but I don't want to get hurt. No, just as Carol had mentioned at the end, our next steps, we will be having a citizen-led or a citizen workshop. We're going to do it here in the council chambers. I know in the past we've gone over to the senior center. I just figure it'll be more comfortable for the public to come into this setting, and then we can turn the podium around and fit quite a few people in here. And then we're going to make some of these suggestions, make the changes, make sure it's a little bit more clear for everybody, where the money's coming from, where we're spending it, and then we'll bring that back to council. Ideally, we would like to have it tentatively approved at the end of November, but we put some fluff in there. We do have another meeting in December that we can get it approved, and if all else fails, we can always bring it back at the beginning of next year. We'd just like to have it done before we're really jumping into the operating budget, just to make it easier. If we combined them like we did last year, I know it makes our workshops and our meetings quite a bit longer, so. But it's not an absolute must.
Okay. And yes, I mean, the budget is due June 1st, so capital improvement projects are subject to change. We know that.
Correct.
Again, I do appreciate the work that has gone into this. Always good to get some new software. Again, I've mentioned it before that this was several years ago, before I was a member of council. Yeah, it was this pasted together spreadsheet that was, it wasn't good. This is much better. All right, we'll move then to item number 2, discussion of American Rescue Plan Act funding.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. So essentially this item is meant for us to have a little bit of a discussion and have the council provide staff feedback for the planning of the use and methods of public input for the American Rescue Plan funds. First, I'll give you a little bit of an overview. So the city has already received about $10.8 million, our first installment of the Rescue Plan funds, and next year we'll receive our second installment. The city has until the end of 2024 to commit the funds and until the end of 2026 to spend them. of course, the American Rescue Plan Act is designed to help communities recover from the pandemic. Generally, the expenses are eligible to be used, but not limited to. The first item is revenue replacement, and our finance department has taken a look at that. We do not qualify for utilizing it for revenue replacement, so that item is no longer on the table for us to use it for. So other items that it can be used for include COVID-19 expenditures, as well as addressing the negative impacts on our community, so it can be used for assistance to businesses, households, and economic recovery, and it can also be used for investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So you have 3 different handouts that I placed on the dais for you. The first one is kind of an updated staff-led and based on your input as well over the past several weeks are just some general ideas that we could use the money for. And then several of the items have strike-throughs through them since they weren't eligible projects. The second handout up there is the Federal Register. It goes in depth about the actual uses of the funds. And then the third is a frequently asked questions from the Department of Treasury on the recovery funds. So the next steps would be development of a proposed plan, and then whatever kind of level of input you would like from the public. I would recommend 2 community open houses so that we can have our stakeholders from different community partners and organizations to attend, as well as residents to get their feedback. We could do them at 2 different locations for the convenience of people attending, and possibly another workshop with you to go over the actual items and make sure that we have everything that you'd like in there. So I'm here for discussion and questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so on the form, the first document that you gave us, I'm assuming the strike-throughs, they do not qualify, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what staff would believe do not qualify, and we're continuing to look at this and get additional guidance. We do have a contact with the federal government that we can run ideas through, so that's helpful.
And we can start assigning it or using it now?
Yes, we could. Ideally, we would come up with our spend plan so that we can make sure that each item is a qualifying use, and just for coordination, so that we know that we can spend all of the funds by the due date.
And they need to be committed by 24, and we have
until 26.
We have until 2026 to spend it. Okay, and we don't have to. I know previously, for example, funds had to be associated with a COVID-related emergency or expenditure. These do not have to be restricted to that?
Correct. They just have to fit in to the different eligible uses.
Eligible uses. Okay, thank you.
But we can use them for COVID-related expenditures as well.
But they don't have to be. You don't have to say this was as a result of the pandemic that this happened, that this is now why we need to spend that. Okay, great. Thanks. That's it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? With regard to the COVID-19 relief, unfortunately, we still see residents that are impacted by that. I noticed there's a strike-through on the lunch and food pantry assistance for the senior center. And I get that we can't use this money for regular funding of a program like that, but there would be money available if the costs at the senior center had increased due to COVID-19. I'm thinking of a particular situation where the center had to close for a couple of weeks. That increased their cost of delivering meals out to the community. So I'm just saying that we understand the program a little bit better, but there's some things that we can still look to do if, in fact, they are COVID-19 related. I know that looking at this, when we were first told about the money, it seemed like, well, we can do an awful lot for infrastructure for our community, and then we found out, well, not so fast. So we see an awful lot of strike-throughs on here. That's understood with the increased understanding that we have of the program, and we'll have to wait and see. There are, aside from the money that has come to the city already, there are other programs out there. I know that you and city staff are looking into those, where there may be specific type of projects that could be funded. So I know that, we're not giving up, and this is not the final document. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, I would characterize this as a starting point. And back to your comment about the senior center, I think the community open houses would really help to communicate how requests should be packaged, just relating them to pandemic expenses and other eligible ways that they could receive funding.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Tedder. We will move then to our final public comment period. Public comment during this portion of the meeting may be on any subject. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes, and as always, we ask that speakers be civil and concise. Is there anyone in council chambers wishing to speak in the final public comment period? All right, we will go to the phone. If anyone wishes to call in for the final public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629. This is the final public comment period for the City Council Capital Improvement Project Workshop. Anyone wishing to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, were there any comments received via email?
No comments.
Thank you. All right, hearing no one, we will close the final public comment period then, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for your help, and we will be meeting on this subject in the future.